Hi, I'm Karen Rice and welcome to my acrylic painting channel. I'm going to be painting a step-by-step Bluebell woods with silver birch trees using lots of really fun textured techniques. These include using a plastic card, plastic palette knife, sponging and spattering. And this tutorial is suitable for beginners and you don't have to worry about any drawing. There is no drawing. I really hope you're going to enjoy it, and if you do so and you want to see more tutorials like this, why not subscribe if you haven't already to my acrylic YouTube channel. So let's get started. For a full list of all the materials I'm going to be using in this tutorial, please see the description below. But I'm using these Amsterdam acrylic paints because I bought a box of 72 and you can get a lot of different colours. So I'm just using them up here. They're fun to use and it's quite nice just to pick out a favourite colour and have a go. So I've just used like a pastel pink and a light blue grey there, and I'm just putting dots of colour onto the acrylic canvas paper here just to get myself started. It's just a starting place, and especially if you're a beginner you just need to cover this surface here. You could just do it with one flat colour if you like, but this is so much more fun. I'm not using a photograph, I'm just painting from my imagination, so there's no drawing here. It's so much easier to do this way, so you get in contact with your imagination. We're just going to draw some silver birch trees with our palette knife just to mark them in, but here I am. It's a plastic cheapy little palette knife. You can get in a little set, or you could use a plastic card to do this as well, a cut up old store card. And I'm just mixing in now the purple, the light blue and the pink for sort of the sky, but also to kind of give the sort of soft colours of the bluebells as well. It's almost a bit semi-abstract, impressionistic style painting this. It's really, when I was a young child actually, I remember when I was about 7 or 8, I painted in this style with a palette knife with some old oil paints that I got with one of those paint by numbers set, and instead of me painting by numbers I actually just painted my own sort of trees in a forest sort of thing, and it was not unlike this in a way. It was very impressionistic and I just painted it with feeling, and I really kind of recommend it whatever level you are, just to kind of have a little practice doing something like this, just smudging paint in and blending. So I've blended, as you can see, the greens in the foreground there and in the middle distance. I'm not quite sure where I'm even going with this. I know I'm going to put some silver birch trees in, but I'm just going to see where it takes me with the different techniques. But you saw that I scratched in with my palette knife as well. And I'm using some little bit more of a lighter green here just to get some more foliage for the trees. So I'm just patting that in with my palette knife. And it's quite nice. It almost reminds me of oil painting. This is actually some black paint, but you could use some dark blue or dark green. And I just wanted to paint in some darks as well. So it all kind of feels a bit of a mess at the moment. But this first stage, you can really let yourself go, because the beauty of acrylic painting is you can paint straight over the top. It's an opaque medium, it dries quickly, and you can just keep practicing. And I'm just actually scraping off paint now just to mark in where I want some of these trees. It's quite nice to do. It's quite freeing. If you don't like what you've done, just smear it back in with the palette knife again. You don't have forever to paint with the acrylics, so once they start getting a bit tacky, just let it dry and then begin again, paint over the top. As you can see, I'm just using my paper towel there just to wipe off the excess paint. But it feels good to do this. I don't know why. Just scraping it off, because you get some nice textures as well left behind. I'm just using acrylic paper here, and I put some framing tape around the edge so I can get a nice white border later on. It just sort of, if you're storing your paintings, it's quite nice. It presents them really nicely. So I'm just smudging in some of the foreground here, just going by my instincts really, and just trying to create some atmospheric effects as well. And I've used the paint actually I got from the foreground. I'm printing it now onto the top area as well. It's quite nice, and then doing the same at the bottom. I've dried my painting off now. It's thoroughly dried, and I'm using a sponge to print on some foliage using some light and mid greens. If you don't have greens, you can use blue and yellow. Don't worry about colour mixing, just have the fun of it, especially if you're starting out in acrylics. And as I said earlier, you work dark to light rather. I'm so used to saying it about my watercolour painting. It's the complete opposite in watercolour. So in acrylics, oil painting, etc., you work dark to light. So I'm just sort of tapping in this colour. Now, if you're using a natural sponge, which I am, don't worry, it won't spoil the sponge, but you must make sure you rinse off the acrylics afterwards. That's all I'll suggest. Otherwise it will dry hard and your sponge could get spoilt. So I've just added a little bit of white to that green as well, just to add a touch more light. And I'm actually going to be sponging in some Bluebell colours now. And you could use, if you don't have violet as I've got there, you can just use blue and pink and mix it together for darker Bluebell colours, and for lighter Bluebell colours just add some white. So I've rinsed my sponge actually, and I'm just sponging in some lighter greens now, and lots of yellow in there and light greens, and it just adds a bit of light to your painting as well. And as you can see, I'm literally, I've not really used a brush yet. It's just palette knife and sponging, and it's quite freeing up to paint this way. So you sometimes holding a brush in your hand can tighten you up. So just sort of letting go and painting this way creates some great effects here. And you can see the sponging is really nice for textures. I've also used a scouring sponge as well, something you scrub your pots and pans with. That's quite good for acrylic paints actually. And I've used that before as well. It creates some lovely textures for foliage. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually going to my brush, and I'm using a liner brush, or you can use a rigger or a round brush even. I mixed up some blue, some white, and a tiny touch of that violet colour. But if you don't have it, you can use some pink, or even red if you don't have the pink. But I'm spattering, so the paint has to be watered down slightly. And also when you're spattering, make sure you're doing it somewhere where you're not going to spoil anything. You can get acrylics off, but it is a bit of a pain if you've got little dots of colour all over the place. It normally ends up on my hands and face. So that's always good fun. So I'm just spattering some white light colour. It's to represent the sky really, some little, you know, sort of sky holes here. When you spatter actually, it's very random. It kind of reminds me of the Impressionist painters. You know, doing the technique of pointillism with lots and lots of different colours, that, you know, lots of mates, for instance, blues, dots, and then yellow dots, and from a distance they come together and look like the colour green. It's really clever. So I've dried off my painting now, and I'm using my little plastic palette knife again, and I'm just sort of scrubbing or sort of scraping on these silver birch trees. I can sort of see the marks that I left earlier, so I'm just going for, you know, using them as a guide. But if you've lost those, don't worry, you can just create some more silver birch trees, you know, just scraping on. And there's quite a bit of texture on the surface from the palette knife, the sponging and the spattering, so it's quite nice. So it's not, the paint's not fully going on, and if you can see the surface that I'm using there, it is just sticky back plastic on a board, so don't worry. I always spill over onto my surface when I'm painting, even when I'm teaching. I always need another sort of clean patch to mix some paints. I'm in too much of a hurry to rinse and wipe off sometimes. But it's quite effective, as you can see there, just using the white. I've actually added a tiny pinch of yellow ochre as well, so it's not completely white. Now I've swapped my plastic card here, and I quite like using plastic cards. It's a store card, and you can cut them up all different sizes as well. And I'm just putting some thinner marks in there, and just printing really. It's so much fun. So I did allow my white trees to dry before I put these darker markings on the silver birch trees. And I'm using black and orange, and I'm using the plastic card, and it just brings them to life really. I'm just trying to keep the markings as random as I can. I've painted a lot of silver birch trees, so if you're not sure about the markings, just check out an image on Google Images or pexels.com or one of those sites, photo sharing sites. You can get some really good examples, and I'm just sort of painting in and printing in some lovely limey green grasses here as well, just at the base of the tree, just so it kind of sort of makes them look like they're growing out of the ground, creates an element of, well, not quite realism. I'm using my card again just to put some white, a little bit more white on the edge of the trees to show the lights coming from the left. It's just to create a little bit of depth and makes them look a little bit more solid and 3D. But I'm really pleased with this painting because it was from my imagination. I just wanted to have a go and just a little bit of art therapy really. You know, just sometimes it's just nice just to paint and not have to worry about what it's going to look like at the end. But here's the finished painting. I hope it inspires you to get your acrylics out and just play around with them, and don't worry, and just see what happens. Be creative. If you'd like, as I said earlier, if you'd like to see more tutorials like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section below. But thank you for watching this tutorial and for supporting my acrylic painting channel. Happy painting. Bye for now.